Greetings and welcome to Eco. I'm Caledorn and I'm joined here by the lovely KatherineOfSky. How are you today, Catherine?
Thank you, Caledorn. I am doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great too, and I'm very excited about this video because this video is a special one. Um, so we wanted to talk a little bit about how we have arranged our servers, because this is the fourth iteration of our little social experiments. So this server we will get back to at a later point in the video. Initially, we tried a test server where I wasn't very present, so perhaps you could tell us a little bit about how things were organized and run in the test server environment, Catherine.
Sure. On the test server, we had a small group of moderators from my Discord channel and admins as well. And we wanted to figure out how the game works. Like, what do you do with money? How do you get money and trading and all of these kind of things? And it actually turned out to be quite a frustrating experience where several people got frustrated with the way things are going because we had different players who had different amounts of time to commit to the game and play. So the people who were wanting to spend more time couldn't do the tasks they wanted to because they needed more skill points, and so they were relying on other people who might not have been there. So it was interesting, to say the least. And a few people decided not to join the next server because of that experience. Once we had a higher population, it ended up being better. What we ended up doing was we gave 100% skill point, what do you call it? Turn-in bonus, or what is it called? Refund bonus.
Yeah.
So that the people who were playing most of the time could pick up the skills that they lacked with efficiency so that they could progress in the game. But other people were not that thrilled with this. I mean, understandably. But it was quite hard to balance with a very small group. I think we had, how many, like 5 to 7 people, something like that?
I don't remember because, as I said, I wasn't very present. I just popped in and said hello.
Oh, you're breaking up a bit for me.
Oh, sorry. I don't remember exactly how that was in the first server because I only played with you the first day or so, together with Ailani, and then the rest of the gang joined, so I dropped out a bit. So I joined mid-game server 1. That was when I really got into the game. But I do remember there was a bit of grumbling about some things that happened in the test server. So yes, that is, sometimes that happens, but it was very early. We were very unfamiliar with things in the game. So when we came to server 1, we adjusted the skill refund to the default 0.5. And we also did set it to medium collaboration. I think we had it on low collaboration in the test server so that people could take more professions. Server number 1, I can take it from where I took over in server number 1, because before I took over, everyone was using their own personal currencies. And yes.
Yeah, we should talk a little bit about that, I guess. I was there from the beginning of server number 1, and it was kind of funny because I was wanting to hide out, but it ended up not being a hideout, but ended up being the very center of the town. And it was really interesting because we had many different shops all over the place, and people found that they couldn't buy the things that they wanted. I mean, initially, when you just need hewn logs and stone, it's fine. But later on, when you're wanting to buy couches and, maybe the couch seller doesn't want stone, people would have to make several different trips from shop to shop to shop to try to get, the personal currencies traded in for some other currency they wanted in order to buy, the item that they desired. So it was at that point that we definitely wanted a single currency for the server. and it was quite difficult to try to convert over, but eventually we figured it out with your help, of course. And you came on and became the central bank, essentially.
Yes, and I've kept that role ever since. So when I joined in server number one, I was a bit apprehensive, because one thing that I must say about Eco is that the latest blog that I read from John Kay, who I believe is the CEO of Strange Loop Games, he points out quite clearly that eco does not only mean ecology; it also means economics, and we've definitely seen how that aspect of the game is a quite important aspect of the game as well during our 4 server iterations. Back in server number one, we just made a single currency. I made a mint, I made a bank, and it worked pretty well. But we had two issues that I remember. Some players had spawned on the other side of the planet, and we were on a 180 times 180 planet, which meant that it was quite a bit of way to go to get to the bank and to the where most of the player population was. So at the final days of the server before we took down the meteor, whom we have aptly named Bob, by the way, we built, or rather we dug out, which was very impressive, a large tunnel in the mountain beside the bank, which was aptly named Moria, where all the players received a small lot. They could build a shop, and they could transport their goods to that area, and we had this like in Factoria, we had this mall area where everyone could go and do their shopping. But of course, by the time we were finished with the tunnel, we were also ready to take down the meteor. So we sadly didn't see much of the Moria mine being used as much as we would have wanted to. But we also ran into a problem with the database back then, because the database file had at that point grown quite substantial. So since then we have run the servers without the database on, so the game doesn't write any database stuff for statistics. We've just left that off for the servers until the ecodevs have optimized that part. And obviously, since the game is in early access, and with the amount of players we are having on this server, it is understandably that database file, at the point where we disabled it, it was over 1 gigabyte of data in that file. So it was a substantial amount of data. So what we learned from the experience with server 1 was that we wanted to, from the offset of the game, we wanted to attempt to have kind of like a centralized area where everyone could do their shopping and their crafting, and thus the city was born, and that was the main focus of server number 2 was this this large city. And we did the same thing with a central or a common currency, but in server 2 and that's something that we have continued to do in both server 3 and 4 as well. We have the centralized currency. We spawn in the necessary gold bars that we need to back it. We could have obviously used other things as well rather than gold bars, but we've just chosen to use gold ingots, and we back the currency with that, and we spawn in the mint and the treasury, and we build a bank building, which we will be showing in this video very soon. And that worked very well. But of course, again, early access, we ran into some problems because the economy viewer was very slow and very sluggish after a week or so on the server, because there were so many players in the city. I think we had more than 50 people living in the city at a point.
Yes, and it was quite horrible to try to open up chests and things like that, because it would connect to your neighbor's property and things.
Yes. And so things got pretty laggy, and yeah, that's also that founded the cornerstone for our idea in server number 3, which
Before we get to server number 3, I'd like to just say something real
yes.
quick about the currency issue. Is that on the test server, we didn't use currency at all. And server 1 and 2, I have to say that it was really quite annoying. Or server 2, we spawned in the currency, didn't we?
Yes.
That's right. So server 1, yeah, I really didn't like using local currency or personal currency, because it made the transition very, very difficult to go to the centralized currency, the single currency, because people were valuing things quite differently, and we ended up having to do double shops just to eat up the owed currency, and then people could buy things for the new central currency. So I'm really glad that we've switched over to spawning in that stuff right from the beginning of the game.
Yes, it really does help quite a bit. Of course, there is the currency exchange system, but the problem that we found with the currency exchange system is that if we allow people to exchange personal currency for the global currency, then the player who has unlimited amount of his own currency or her own currency can just exchange as much as they want, and then get a more or less just grab all the currency there is. So
Yeah.
that was problematic. Yes. Are we ready to move on to server number 3 then?
Yes.
So in server number 3, we had this very interesting experience where we had factions.
Yeah, everybody in the Discord really wanted politics, and we had people wanting to join the Green Party, or the sort of industrial party, or the raise the sea level party, such things.
And we had the imperial district, which was more or less you and me, who were leading all the people who didn't really want to bother with politics. So that was the benevolent dictatorship part of the server. And that was a very, very interesting experiment, I must say.
I found it interesting that some people were so turned off by the thought of this kind of politics in the game. They refused to play the game. They would not even play on the server, which kind of made me sad in a lot of ways, because
yes.
It's hard to see people leave your friends that you're playing with.
Yes. I also felt that was very very sad. I wish that I wish that it was possible to have some kind of politics, but at the current state of the game, or maybe it's just a problem with the basic human psyche, for all I know, I worry that running a full-fledged political system in the game would very easily, which actually may be intentional, and if that was intentional, or is the intent of the eco devs, I must say they've done a magnificent job at it as well, because it can very quickly mirror real-life politics very quickly, and that is worrying, especially in a community like ours, where we try to encourage cooperation and a happy community where we try to prohibit real-life politics being discussed in our or actually we don't try, we have prohibited real-life politics as a discussion topic in our Discord. And so at a point we had several channels for the various factions in the Discord, and I think it's safe to say that neither you nor I was very happy about it, and we just made a cardinal decision where we just eliminated all the different chats and said that, okay, it's okay that you belong to a different faction, but we are going to have one chat, and we're going to have 2 voice chats, and the second voice chat is if you need to coordinate something quickly with someone and you don't want to listen to any random chatter or be interrupted, as opposed to what it was in the beginning.
Yeah, it was really sad, because you'd see, we had a chat for each faction at some point, and you'd see one person in a chat room just waiting for more people from their faction to arrive, and they might have been in that chat channel for an hour or two waiting. And it was just sad to see, because it was very divisive to the community to do that. And I'm really glad that we encouraged people to kind of, get back into the same voice channel and use the text channels, not only just for socialization, but just to see what was also going on in the rest of the world within the other areas. And maybe you'd like to talk a little bit about that, how each area was very close, like a little monastery unto themselves.
Yeah, all of the factions, there was, of course, a high level of competitiveness that went down in such an environment, because all of the factions, our faction, we quickly discarded the entire idea of being competitive. So the other factions, especially two of the factions, went into a very high competitive mode where they competed as to who would be the first to get to the end game product. So they were very clear and very concise about what they were doing and what they were building and creating and making, so that they could research the technologies first. And there was kind of a race as to who would be the first one to have powered carts. There was a race as to who would first be the faction who would be able to provide petroleum. And yeah, it was. Yeah. It was interesting to witness as a bystander from an admin perspective, but I'm very glad that I didn't participate in that kind of competitiveness myself, because myself, I am not a very competitive player, and I prefer cooperation. But at the same time, I think it is also very important to mention the fact that both of those factions, interestingly enough, had a communist approach to their economy. So they had this very high level of competitiveness between their two factions, but they didn't use any kind of currency. They just had a sort of a centralized workshop area, and everyone just contributed what they could contribute based on what skills they had. And one of the factions was very, very specialized. They had 10 players, and those 10 players were in very specific about what they were doing, while the other faction, I don't remember exactly how many players they had, but they had more than 10. And it was interesting to witness from the outside. And also both of the factions, they had a very distinct way of building things. One of them had kind of like a Soviet, you almost had this feeling of coming into a Soviet city with housing blocks that were very uniform, and it was highly interesting to see, while the other faction was very focused on building very beautiful constructions. But at the same time they had these industrial, I vividly remember the Church of the Ingot, which was quite amusing. and yes. Also a very, very large factory looking building in brick that had all the oil refineries inside. But the thing that I would like to say is that I really liked how the communist approach, it looked very pleasant. The players in the factions were having a very good time together. They were really enjoying playing a non-economical way of playing the game, and I'm not sure if it's possible to get that same feeling with as many players, because I think what made that possible was the fact that they were a limited group. I'm not sure if it's possible to do such an approach in one big community with 50 or more players. But for now, we come now to this iteration. And
before we come to there, I wanted to say something about the housing, if I might.
Of course.
I talked to some of the people in the communist factions, and basically they were just all pulling together to get to the end, who can shoot down Bob the Meteor first.
Yes.
And one of the factions mentioned that they built extra housing spaces for new members that might come along, so that they could instantly get started with earning, the housing skill points, so they could contribute better to the the skills of the group, which I thought was really interesting.
Yes.
And not something that the capitalist group would do.
I agree.
So that was kind of cool to see that happen.
very communal and very cooperative
Hmm.
way of playing, which I remember that myself. I really liked that part of it.
The only thing that was quite, um, I guess, kind of funky about that is that each of the groups didn't do much trading with the other groups at all. I mean, I think the Imperium traded with the Green Collective a couple of times, but for the most part, none of the groups was interested in money because they were all doing communist things.
Yes,
So you kind of had to trade them materials instead of cash.
yes. So then we move on to this server iteration.
Hmm.
So I'm going to move a bit around here. This planet we have named it Betaset, and this is the welcome center built by one of our, or actually it was designed by one of our community admins, and several of the community admins have built this magnificent building. I'm very impressed.
It's
So
gorgeous.
this area shows all our current server rules, and here we have one of our players, Morbid Corpse. He's now looking at the signs to read the rules, and we have created an item which we've modded in, which is a voucher item that every player who joins the server gets this voucher item, and they can go over to this building, which is. I'm quite proud of this building. Catherine and I have built this building together. This is the very modern Bank of Sky. So when a player joins the server, they can go to this store here and they can exchange the voucher because the store is set to buy the voucher at it's a Skycoin voucher. It's set to buy it at 1,000 with no limitation, and each player only gets one voucher. So they will get 1,000 of the global currency in exchange for the voucher. We have also disabled the spawning of claim markers, so that any player who joins the server will not receive any claim markers. And if you look at the globe in the minimap down on the left hand here, you can see that this area is very heavily deeded up. So what we did was to avoid lag in this server iteration, where we wanted again to try a city. I'm going to zoom in on the map here. We made all these 4x4 deeds with a sort of an easement around the deed, and then we have a communal park area in between all of the deeds and the easement areas, where we're going to have parking lots where people can spawn their carts and so forth. And we have all the roads pre-planned. It's a very actually, it's a substantial amount of work that has been put into this by the community admins, and the reason why we've done it like this is for several reasons, but the primary reason is we want to try to have a central community where everyone can be a part of a central community instead of being spread out across the planet. And the easement around the deed is to avoid them accidentally building outside of their property. And then the park area, which is 2 plots wide, so there is 4 plots between every actual plot, is to avoid any accidental crossover between storage items like chests or stockpiles on the various deeds, to try to reduce lag for the players when they are doing their stuff in their house or workshop or whatever they build, to be pretty specific about it. Mm-hmm. Second of all, we have also prohibited mines in the city, because we have noticed that when you have large mines, and we've had some pretty substantial mines, specifically in server number 3 and in server number 1, we had some gigantic mines. And when you have the mines, that seems to give a bit of additional lag. So we have also instated a rule that says that the players can only sell and buy things in their shops that they actually need to produce items, and the items that they can actually sell based on the professions they have taken up. of course, we didn't want to limit players so that they couldn't dig out basements. So we've said that players can dig down 12 blocks, I believe, from the surface, so that they can have a basement area in their houses as well. And at present, there is a lot of players already in the server, and
yeah, this is just we've just opened the server up, what, 10 or 12 minutes ago?
Yep.
Or well, maybe 30 minutes ago now, looking at the time.
Yeah, 30 minutes ago, yes. And players are now building and looking for areas. Here we have someone who's chopped a tree, and there is currently online, we have quite a bit of players, as you can see down in the in my chat window there, because I just typed /players.
/players. Okay, let me do that. Wow.
Yes, exactly.
Wow, indeed.
So this server is going to very quickly progress. It's going to be a lot of action going on here. We have given players a sign, so that when they log in to the server, they get 3 signs instead of the clay markers, and they can put down a sign or several signs on their plot to tell what professions they are taking up, so that they don't have to compete with their neighbors. Because another thing that we have also chosen to do in this server is to have a kind of a planned economy system, where we have a set level of price that all players will have to charge as a minimum for also charge and buy at a minimum for basic resources. And we have also set down a rule that says that people are not allowed to sell things at a loss. So if, for instance, you want to sell a mortared stone, the minimum price you could sell a mortared stone for is what it would cost you in raw materials. So you can sell it at making no profit if you want, but you're not allowed to sell it at a loss. And this is to avoid price conflicts.
I was going to say, on server 2, it got so bad that people were trying to sell things, and people were just lowering the prices they were going to buy from them because of the huge amount of competition. And it made me really sad, because some of the people were saying, oh my gosh, I can't even buy food because I can't sell enough stuff to make any profit on that. So that's one of the reasons we instituted the price fixing on basic items, and forbid selling at a loss because of that.
Exactly. And I also think it is important to mention the fact that we are playing on high collaboration, which we also did in server number 3, but even on high collaboration with this amount of players, we experienced that things progressed too quickly. So yes, what we've also done is that we have modded all the research skills in 2 ways. One of them is that you cannot research a book anymore. When you research something on the research table, you get 1 scroll. So if you want multiple scrolls, you have to do the research over again. We've also eliminated the research efficiency skill entirely, so that you have to pay the full cost for making a scroll. And we have modified both the efficiency and speed on every profession, except for the gathering ones, I believe. So instead of having them go in iterations of 5, so that you have 5 skill levels, that goes up to 80% efficiency, we now have it in an iteration of 8, and it goes like 10, 20, 30, 40%, and then 45, 50, 55, and 60% as a maximum of both efficiency and speed in all skills.
Yeah, that was intended to cost a lot extra for getting sort of minimal gains back. But we found that the way the game is working right now, with the no cap on housing skill points, people in last server were getting 200 skill points a day just from their house, which was kind of ridiculous, I thought. And people could easily switch skills with the 50% refund cost, or they could just take all the skills they wanted to. And what that does is that reduces collaboration, because they no longer need to rely on their neighbors to make stuff for them. They can just do everything themselves. So it was a very highly undesirable situation.
Exactly. So, yeah. Yes, of course. The good thing I have taken jotted down some notes here. We've talked about the social and the lag dynamics. Oh, and we have the construction skills. While we think that the construction skills are interesting skills because they provide players with a profession like a house builder, we have chosen to not use the construction skills at all. So those skills have been removed, and everyone gets access to building with all the different types of blocks, regardless of they don't have to invest any skill points in it. The reason we chose to do that is because we saw that most players didn't bother to actually hire someone to do the building for them, and that led to quite a bit of very uniform, boring houses and buildings, which was kind of sad because we know that there are so many people in this community who are very creative, and as soon as we removed the construction skills and we let everyone have access to those blocks, all these magnificent buildings started to turn up, and they've just become more and more magnificent for every server iteration, because we removed those in iteration number 2, and we saw some pretty impressive stuff going on there. In the previous server, we saw some even more impressive stuff coming up, and I am very, very, very eager to see what this iteration is going to show us in terms of creativity, because that is also one of the more amazing things about a voxel game and a block builder game. It's to see how people use their creative skills, and it's probably the favorite part of the game for me. It's just looking around, browsing, and looking at all the magnificent creative ways and solutions people come up with when they build and construct things. It is simply amazing.
I agree. I find Eco to be such a beautiful game. It's a voxel game, but it's quite refined and quite soft in terms of, the grass and things, and that landscape really lends itself to beautiful structures. And since we took away the skill books for construction and gave it to everybody else, we've seen mixed material buildings, people using accents of different materials on one or another, and everybody's been enjoying building a house. Well, some people don't care about their houses, but the vast majority love to add little touches like stairs and roofs and things like that weren't possible unless they spent very, very precious skill points on those in the previous server.
Exactly.
So that's one of my favorite things too that we've done.
And finally, we should round up the video. So finally, I would like also to mention the fact that one of the ways that we have, since we have this central bank, one of the ways that we have encouraged people to build roads is that we have a tax rate where we ask players to build roads, and we pay them with the treasury money for kind of like community work. And that is a very good way for new players to, because if anyone joins late, they will of course be at a disadvantage both in skill points and also in money. So one way for a player who joins like 10 days into the server, we want this server to run for up to 30 days. The previous servers have all been stopped within 14 days. That's also one of the reasons we have increased the efficiency and speed costs in skill points. But that is a way for players who join the server in a bit later point to make money and to quickly become a part of the economy and also feel useful, because roads are a very, very useful and very needed thing. It's okay on this plane that we're on right now, but the moment that you want to buy something from someone who lives down here, since over here there is an edge, you need a road, because you can't pull a cart up these hills here, and there is several of them. So the landscape is not very friendly for carts. So that's where that's one of the ways that we encourage the academy to work, and also these players who then receive the money from building the roads, they will spend those money and put them into circulation so that other players also benefit from these players having received the money.
Yeah, indeed, and they can start off their house right away and build something, get their housing points, and get food, so they get more skill points as well. So it's really beneficial to have these kind of sort of gatherer professions straight for people who are just starting out on the server, where they can road building is a big one, but also just tree chopping and things, and that another reason for the fixed prices on lumber and stone and things like that.
Yes. So I think we should wrap this up now, and thank you very much for joining me and helping me remember everything, Catherine.
Sorry, you broke up there.
I was saying that thank you very much for joining me and helping me remember everything, because
oh yes, it was my pleasure. I'm happy to. I love talking about our servers because they are very much a community collaboration, and it's been really fun to explore the different dynamics, both in the game and also socially, how we're interacting and seeing what what we like, what we don't like, what those proclivities have led us to in terms of rules for the next server, and how that affected the next iteration of things,
yes.
and how these affected things in real life. And while we've had a lot of disagreement from players and lots of some grumpiness, we've also seen absolutely beautiful friendships bloom, and people wanting to work together in groups, and people wanting to settle near each other. So it's been just a really amazing experience from my point of view.
And the same sentiment from me. So I would actually like to reach out to Strangeloop Games and say thank you for this jewel of a game, and I look
Indeed.
very much forward to see what you change, what you add, and how this game progresses during your development phases. This is very exciting.
I agree. We're very much looking forward to any, especially new content. We want more game. We want to last longer.
Yes.
Because we just so enjoy playing this and gathering together, and really, it's brought our community stronger together, to be stronger with each other.
Definitely. And that is a very important point too. It has actually really made. You mentioned it already, but it has this game has made people come together in such a manner that they have become very good and very close friends. We've seen that in multiple instances, and it is very, very nice to see that happen from a game. And yes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think we should wrap it up there, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, thank you all for joining us, and it's going to be interesting to show off how this server has progressed soon. We will be revisiting the server, and we will show how the server progresses, how the players build things. Now you can see there's a big plain. In a few days, this is going to be a city. Thank you all, and take care of yourselves and each other.